Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
In later interviews, police would talk to Dennis Rader, and he would refer to the many sides of him as in a Rubik's Cube, having many different levels, different sides, but all relatively the same, and how he could quickly change from one side to another. He would do this as a way to seem more smarter than he actually was, but police would quickly realize that he probably stole this type of theory from his time at the Air Force and the military, as this way of describing something was very military based. And he would go from there and quickly start talking about what he would call a hit kit, which were items that he would bring with him when he would be committing these crimes, and would often go into detail reliving these events, and would also go into detail also about what he would consider irritants, where he would refer to dogs and children as irritants themselves. It is sometime around January that Dennis Rader would actually run into the Otero family. He would say that he would actually be taking his wife to work, where he would see the mother, Julia Otero, walking her youngest daughter, Josephine, and had quickly decided that he would make Julia and Josephine his first victims. Husband and father, Joseph Otero, which I would like to add that Joseph and Julia were originally from Puerto Rico. They would quickly move from Puerto Rico to Harlem, New York, and it's said that this is where Joseph and Julia actually met. It's said that Joseph was a former Air Force soldier, and not only did he spend time in the Air Force, but he was also a champion boxer and a gourmet chef. He would get married to Julia, and the two would have 5 children: Charlie, Danny, Carmen, Joseph II, and Josephine. It's said that Joseph and Julia would actually move their family from Harlem, New York to Wichita, Kansas, as it was a more calmer residential area. It's also said that Joseph was a very stern father, but he would put a large emphasis on his children pursuing an education. Now, it's also said that all the kids would work very hard at their studies, but they would say that the one that would have the most academic potential would be the youngest, Josephine Otero. And as I said before, Rader would actually be taking his wife to work one day, where he would actually watch Julia and Josephine walking on the sidewalk, and he had planned that they would be his first victims. On the morning of January 15th, 1974, Dennis Rader would actually park his car and walk over to the Otero home. One of the ways that he would have so much knowledge about these homes was his job at the time working with ADT Security Homes. As he would approach the back porch of the Otero home, he would actually take out and cut the phone lines, thinking that the only people in the home at that point in time was Julia and Josephine. But Julia and Josephine would not be the only ones there, as the ones in the home at that point in time was Julia, Josephine, Joseph, and Joseph II. After cutting the phone line, it's around this time that he would start working on trying to break in through the back door, to where he was immediately surprised when Joseph Jr. would actually let the dog outside. Police would later say that, recalling this incident, Dennis Rader would have a slightly irritated look on his face, almost reliving the irritation that he felt on the morning of the murders. Dennis would also recall after Joseph II would actually walk outside, he would actually drop the knife that he had planned on using in this entire dark plan, that he would refer to as the main big knife. Rader will eventually approach Joseph II and at gunpoint would actually let him inside the house. Once walking in, it's said that Joseph Otero originally had thought that this was some prank that his brother-in-law had set up for him, and would even say, "Is this a joke or something? Did my brother-in-law set you up for this?" To where Dennis Rader would tell him, "It's not a joke, this is very serious," and would show the .22 pistol that he had in his hand. He would also tell the Otero family that he had just escaped from prison and was looking for food, money, and a car to escape. Dennis would then take the family into the bedroom, where he would actually make Joseph and Joseph II lie on the ground, to where he would actually tie Julia and Josephine to the bed using rope restraints that he had brought with him from his hit kit. The family was very compliant and would begin complaining about certain circumstances, that the restraints were too tight and that Joseph II had a cracked rib. So Dennis Rader, in a very shocking twist, would actually get a pillow for Joseph II so he could lay his head on a pillow, and he would actually loosen up the restraints a little bit. He would begin by taking a plastic bag and placing it over the head of Joseph Otero. Assuming that Joseph Otero was suffocating, he would walk over to begin suffocating or strangulating Julia Otero, to which she would plead with Dennis Rader to save her son, or not to do anything to her son. It's at this point that Dennis Rader would actually take Joseph II into another room, and he would actually unalive Joseph II. He would unalive Joseph II by asphyxiation, as this was very common with how he did things. It's at this point that Dennis Rader would walk back into the bedroom to finish what he had started with Julia Otero, and it's at this point she was what he would refer to as visibly upset, screaming, "You schmilled my boy, you schmilled my boy." Dennis Rader would also realize that the bag that he had put over Joseph's head wasn't enough, as he would try to bite through the plastic bag trying to breathe air. He would later recall that he didn't have much knowledge on how much pressure and how much it took to unalive someone by strangulation, or just how much pressure you had to use. So Dennis Rader would go back into his hit kit and actually grab 2 t-shirts and more plastic bags. And it said that he would go over to Joseph Otero and he would put a plastic bag over his head, put a t-shirt over that and another plastic bag over that, and tie it up at the base of the neck so he could not escape. He would do the same thing with Julia Otero, and after putting the plastic bags and the t-shirt over her head and tying it around, Dennis Rader would actually sit down in a chair that he had positioned in the bedroom and would watch as Julia and Joseph would suffocate to death. Doing this all in front of 11-year-old Josephine Otero, where Rader would recall her screaming for her mother. It's at this point that Dennis Rader, after both Joseph and Julia were confirmed to be unalive, would take her down to the basement for what Dennis Rader would refer to as an encore. He would take the little child downstairs to the basement, to where he would undress her and tie a noose around her neck and attach it to a sewer pipe in the basement. It's there that Dennis would ask Josephine if her father had a camera that he could use, to which Josephine would tell Dennis Rader that they did not have a camera. And Josephine would ask Dennis Rader, "What's going to happen to us?" To which Rader would respond to young Josephine, "You're going to go to heaven like the rest of your family." And it's there that he would hang the undressed 11-year-old. As 11-year-old Josephine would struggle to breathe hanging from the sewer pipe, it said that Rader would actually sit in front of her and pleasure himself until he climaxed, which would confirm with the investigation that the police would uncover when uncovering the murders of the Otero family, where they found semen stains on the floor of the basement. After unaliving the family, it is there that Dennis Rader would leave the house and he would get inside the Otero family car, dropping it off at a grocery store and realizing on the way there that he had actually forgot his knife in the backyard. So he would walk back from the grocery store to his car, drive back to the Otero residence, go to the backyard, and retrieve his big knife. In a later interview of what he had done to Josephine, he would recall this and look at the police and ask, "What's that word you use for someone that's attracted to children?" The cops would have a very puzzled look and they would just look at him and say, "Pedophile?" To where Dennis Rader would respond, "Yeah, I think I got a little bit of that in me too."